though you have retired from the House of Lords, it looks like you're still keeping an eye on British politics. Tell us about your reform political advertising campaign and what you witnessed during these local elections over the last few days.
Well, I think the my involvement with the campaign is a natural consequence of the report I did for Parliament on the impact of digital realm on democracy. And the truth is that a year and a half of taking evidence, the situation emerged was much, much more serious, I think, than anyone on the committee saw as possible. It was a all-party committee and a unanimous report. When it comes to political advertising, you must cut us some slack. That's actually what was said. The
Wow.
Tories and the Labour Party refused to come and give evidence or be cross-questioned. And you realise that almost democracy is being treated as a kind of happy accident when it happened. Everything hinges on an informed electorate.
And there's two things going on here, isn't it? Which is both the representations in the ads and how they're funded and when they're played, whether they're open to public scrutiny. Tell us about some of your assessments over this local election campaign about the truthfulness of these ads.
Yeah, I mean, every advertising executive, and I started my life in advertising, knows that you can't do an ad that says Heinz baked beans taste better. You can't do it. It gets pulled. And yet there's no similar constraints around political advertising. Therefore, we are being lied to. I mean, there's no point using any other word. And the people who are doing this, somehow or other in their heart of hearts, believe that there's some weird form that's serving democracy or that's serving free speech, which of course it isn't. It's a distortion of the positions they take. And that's become evident over and over and over again during the course of this very local election. And we're trying to use the local elections as a proving ground for the fact you can test this, you can test truth, you can begin to hold people's feet to the fire, and maybe, just maybe, political leaders will decide that we should have an election or election period based on truthful debate, honest debate, and people taking positions that the electorate can understand and not be obscured from.
Has it got worse? You've been watching the advertising scene and the media scene for many years. We have a prime minister who is Peter Oborne, one of our writers, has documented, told an endless number of lies. They seem to accumulate every day. And has that infected the political landscape, particularly since 2016, I think, soon after the famous Battle Barson, 350 million we'd saved to go to the NHS, you gave this speech. Have this a sense of mendacity and misrepresentation accelerated it in the last 5 to 6 years?
I think to an extraordinary degree. I remember being in a BBC studio where I first heard the phrase post-truth. And it was actually trotted out by a journalist who was on the programme with me. He said, well, of course, we're living in a post-truth era. And I literally, it was as though I'd been socked on the chin. I couldn't believe it. Instead of someone saying, can you believe we're living in this era? It was like, that's the era we're living in. And I think what's happened is, and in a way, maybe cutting a little bit of slack for Boris Johnson, I don't think he knows he's lying when he's lying. I think he thinks that actually this is just the way the world runs now.
Boris Johnson may believe his lies, but there should be a media, there should be a check on them from other people. So is it the institutions around politics which are somehow weakened or got more casual?
In fairness, I think it happened in the UK I genuinely think with the arrival of Rupert Murdoch. And, I'm so old. I remember that the Daily Mirror was a newspaper that really was committed to try and tell the truth and make life better. I don't think it lied. Politicians didn't lie. I knew Harold Wilson well. That dates me, doesn't it? Harold Wilson didn't lie. I think that Johnson is both the cause and the consequence of where we are. He came through in an era where the casualization of truth became normalized. And he now has taken it on, like Trump, to an entirely new level.
But there are signs of a turnaround, aren't there? Obviously, the election's not good, at least in London, for Boris Johnson, awareness of the Partygate scandal. And through your reforming political advertising campaign, you've also noticed lies by Labour, let's be clear, and Lib Dems in some of their campaigns. Why do the other parties not want to sign up? We can see the Conservative Party or the Brexit Vote Leave Party has been a major beneficiary of some of the false representations about the glories of leaving the EU. But it's strange that neither the Lib Dems nor the Labour turned up to your committee or sort of endorsed your report. How do we make the other parties realise this is truth is to the benefit of all of us?
Well, I think it's a great question, and I think it's all. I would say it's distressing that they haven't. I mean, but personally, as a Labour peer, I find it very distressing. Interestingly, the Greens have signed up. I'm one of the two of the fringe parties. Now, why have the Greens signed up? The Greens have signed up because they understand, I think, very well that their own agenda can only be pursued on the basis of truth. The Greens are in a rather healthy straitjacket. Their message requires the truth. In the case of the other parties, it's about what works. And the tragic thing is, and I've been in meetings that this has been said, is there's no point in being in politics if you're not in power. And what then goes on, the next sentence is, and therefore anything that gets you into power is legitimate. Any sustainable democracy has to be based on an informed electorate, and that informed electorate deserves to be told the truth. In fact, should require to be told the truth.
So, what are the responses to the report, apart from the sort of rather cynical, well, let's ignore it until we get into power, was that it wasn't practical. You couldn't actually decide what was true and false in a political advert, though your campaign has successfully done that. So, are you in a way setting a standard so you can go to other regulatory agencies and say, look, this can be done?
I think we're trying to do that. We're also trying to say to the media, why are you putting up with this bullshit? Why are you accepting the fact that you're actually becoming the amplification process of what are lies? Just lies.
And just finally, you retired last October with an amazing speech, which went quite viral on social media. And you talked about the changes in society. This is why you mentioned the city, what goes on with financial practices, obviously 2008, and some of the financial derivatives, which brought the stock market and the economy almost to a halt. Have you seen over your long, I don't mean to say too long, but your long esteemed career in the UK, a growing sense of lawlessness and license, and that we need to refine the values of the rule of law and regulation?
What I was trying to say in that speech, and I caused some offense, I think, is because of my personal experience of dealing with Albert Speer, to try to get people to understand that we're on a trajectory and we're on as it were, a flight path that was designed by Hitler and Goebbels and the people around them. And as weird as that may sound to some people, the truth is there's a playbook and we are operating to their playbook. And I've just noticed an extraordinary irony, I've got to say here. Sitting right behind me is a model of Pinocchio. Pinocchio is the very first movie I ever went to. And maybe it's because of my affection for Pinocchio, I'm so sensitive about lies.